Welcome, everybody, to Cinema Royale. I am Travis Hobson of PunchDrunkCritics.com, and we are here with a special episode. Kind of special. I don't know if they're special anymore. I've been doing these little short episodes for a little while now. And I want to talk about a specific issue, and that is Eternals. Over the last couple of days, Rotten Tomatoes, which I am a Rotten Tomatoes critic, yay me, I guess. Been one of those for like 5 or 6 years. But anyway, they put up a question. Is Eternals worthy of being the lowest rated Marvel film? Now, in over 13 years of Marvel films and 27 total movies, they have never had one that has been rated rotten, which is a pretty amazing feat when you think about it, especially when you think about some of the movies that they've put out, because they're not all that great. But they've never had one that has been rotten before until Eternals. And I find that to be pretty amazing. And apparently so does director Chloe Zhao, who we know directed Nomadland, won Oscars just the year before. So did she suddenly turn around and make a shitty Marvel movie? That's a little tough for me to swallow. And Chloe Zhao put that on her Instagram, and she wanted people to respond to that. And the responses have been pretty interesting, actually. A little bit mixed, if you ask me. But I wanted to talk to a couple people about it, get their opinions on Eternals and whether it actually deserves that rating, and what some of the reasons are for the scrutiny that it's taken. So here with me are one person you probably recognize, Cortland Jacoby, who writes for Punch Drunk Critics. How you doing, Cortland?
Hello, Travis. How are you? I'm good.
I'm doing all right. Thank you very much. And someone you probably do not recognize, it is Sam Leggett, who has never done the show with us before. Sam, unmute yourself, man, so we can hear you.
Appreciate that. Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine, man. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Travis, I appreciate you being here, man.
Oh, man. No, well, I'm here. I appreciate you being here. But let's talk about this, though. I find this to be an interesting topic. So Eternals, like I was saying in the introduction, is the only Marvel film that is rated rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. It has as of today, 47% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is crazy. When you think about, like I said, some of the movies that Marvel's put out, they put out 27 movies. And I think we can all agree that there have been a few duds in there. Everybody always points out Iron Man 2 is like the worst, but it's not rotten. It's not rotten. So let's talk about this. And Sam, since you're the new guy here, we're going to ask you, what are your thoughts about Eternals, first of all? And what are your thoughts about this question? Like, what does it deserve to be where it's rated right
now? Well, I guess the bigger question is, do I feel like this is the worst Marvel movie? No, absolutely not. Not even by a long shot. But I also gauge and judge movies as a whole. Like, I don't look at them like, oh, okay, the superhero genre get a pass because of this or this inconsistency. Like, everything as a whole, as a sculpted film, was this a functional film? And I've seen some Marvel films that work to the target audience, but as a film, do they hold up? Absolutely not. And I think that the thing about Eternals is that I was so intrigued by it because it took a lot of risk. It was not your conventional Marvel movie in any state at all. And not just because tonally it was kind of dark, and yes, there was a random sex scene in it unnecessarily. Yes, there was a lot of death, but I think the ideas in it, and I think the human interaction of it, are some of the most personal and impressionable things that Marvel's ever done. And that's all dedicated to Chloe. The biggest thing that I had an issue with is I felt like she was held back by the blueprint. There's a blueprint that all of us know that most Marvel movies have to have. There's got to be a little bit of level comedy. There's got to be a little bit of like action, a lot of action in the third act. And then it has to be some kind of melodrama between the characters. But a lot of the times the characters, some shine very clearly, but this was the first time that every single character in this movie, I was intrigued by. Like, I was like, wow, I'm interested in this character. I'm interested to see where they came from. How did they get to this point? How did their powers work? What does this mean on a cosmic level? And this is also at the same time, the first time that the Marvel has gone to a cosmic level of storytelling, because we've always been like, oh man, what about the Eternals? Oh man, what about this? And now we're finally here and we get introduced to the Deviants. We get introduced to the Eternals. And I felt like the biggest problem with this film is that it held back because it needed to try to still be a part of the blueprint. And I think that conventionally, for people that were just normal Marvel fans, it's like, this doesn't work for me. Like, I don't know what this dark crap is. I don't know what they're trying to do. What's this melodrama? This looks cool sometimes, but I could care less. And I think that is a part of it, is that she was stifled. I don't know how or why, but I do think that there were so many different important things about this Marvel film that I gave it a positive rating. I didn't give it a rotten rating because I actually am a Rotten Tomatoes critic as well. I actually did give it a passing tomato. Functionally as a film, is it deconstructed? Yes. Is the pacing certain so-and-so? Yes. But I do think the ideas in this are very important and are worth talking about. But yeah, I'm gonna stop down.
No, you're good. Cortland, what are your thoughts on this, on Eternals, and what were your thoughts on the movie itself, and what are your thoughts on it being the lowest rated Marvel film ever?
Well, I agree with a lot of what Sam said about Chloe Zhao being stifled, and then also just the fact that she had to work within a certain blueprint that didn't necessarily benefit her or the film. I really liked Eternals. You and I saw it together.
Did we?
We've decided that Chloe Zhao is sort of like our director as friends. And so I really love Chloe Zhao as a director, everything she's done. I've loved. And that included Eternals. I do think it's her weakest film. I think, as Samuel touched upon, the pacing issues are a real problem. And unfortunately, in the superhero genre, pacing and action are vital and crucial to that. I also think that what the Rotten Tomatoes score says more about fandom than anything else, and says more about people joke that the Star Wars fandom kind of is eating itself at this point, and I think that Marvel fans are almost there with this. I don't want to say that there is some racism and sexist undertones to part of this. I think there might be as well. But yeah, so that's sort of where I stand, and I honestly think that, like the Amazing Spider-Man films, this will kind of age better than what it is now. I think we'll look back at it, Eternals with a better light.
That's an interesting idea. It'll only age better if Marvel decides to keep following up on it, though. And
I think it will. I mean, it just came out that we might see Dane in Moon Knight. So I think we'll get touches of it. You're not going to put Harry Styles in the Marvel universe, right? And not use them.
Yeah, there's absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, the problem is Marvel has a tendency to, especially if you read their comics, they have a tendency to leave aside things that don't necessarily click with fans. Whether or not it was something that was creatively good or not, they will just pretend it didn't exist. And that's the thing I'm worried about them doing with Eternals, because it is, the problem that I had with the movie, and I liked it, and I also gave it a fresh on Rotten Tomatoes as well. I enjoyed it. The problem with Eternals, and Cortland probably talked about this a little bit, I'm not necessarily sure that the Marvel Studios, Marvel Cinematic Universe fandom can relate to characters like this. They like the characters, all the ones they've been introduced for people they can relate to. They have a human side. They're grounded for the most part. Even those who are in the cosmic universe, like Guardians of the Galaxy or even Captain Marvel, their roots are down here in the Earth. The Eternals, they're so big and broad. They're connected to the Celestials, which is a concept that is just so crazy, and it even goes beyond that. If you know the history. I'm not so sure that fans were ready to tap into that yet. I don't know if they ever will be. It's hard to relate to things like this. And I think it's one of the reasons that DC movies have had a hard time as well. But in terms of whether or not it deserves to be the lowest rated movie, it doesn't on sheer ambition alone. I don't think it does, because I appreciate the fact that it tries to be more than just the usual blueprint Marvel film. My video is about to cut out, and I'm going to start it back over. I know it will, but that's fine. But when I think about, Sam, a movie like the first Thor,
Yeah.
right? Is that a better or worse movie than Eternals?
So the first Thor movie to me is so campy and cookie cutter that I won't forget it because it's a staple of Marvel, but it's not an Iron Man 1. Like, it's not like something that was groundbreaking. It introduced the character in a very specific way, but all the moments on Earth are very forgettable, like on a real level. Like you kind of, if you go back and look at that movie, most of us going like, oh, let's skip to everything that's on Asgard, or let's see when Thor is like challenged,
It's
not when he's
Thor the Dark World. Like Thor the Dark World is
right. No, yeah, Thor the Dark World is the idea of a rotten. That's not like
Marvel.
I maybe be able to give Thor 1 a pass, but is it better than Eternals? Absolutely not, in my personal opinion. But I will say this, because you brought up an interesting point. When you think about stuff that was in this, like a character like Druid, right? And just the scene at the temple, and what really was happening on a psychological level, on an emotional level, why he left them, that's so human. Even though these characters are so cosmic and so important and so big, the humanity is the thing that makes this film, to me, the most memorable one that they've ever really tried to do. Because it's kind of like, if you look at Ant-Man 2, do y'all remember anything about Ant-Man 2?
Who's the villain in that? I don't remember who's the villain.
Exactly. So it's kind of like,
I don't remember anything about the Ant-Man movies.
Absolutely nothing you remember about it. And somebody will say, well, Ant-Man 2, it was a good movie. Like, why? What do you remember about it? And nobody will be able to give that back to you. And it's like, and I think you're right, Travis, like a lot of the DC movies get a really bad rap because they try to tap that human side while also trying to be comic booky, where there are certain comic books that do try to do that as well. But the most well-received universally for everybody from a digestive standpoint are what the Marvel blueprint was. That's why they're so successful. But I don't know, man, like this movie didn't try to be fan service. It didn't try to be cliche, even though it started to interject cliche comedic moments when it didn't need to. When there were emotional, real moments, they just reneged. And that's when you start to have a real problem. And that's where also the pacing starts to go off too, because you could tell like certain stuff were just added in. And I don't know. I just wanted to raise that point.
So Cortland, you brought up something that I think is a real issue. I do feel like, or at least I'm going to get your opinion. You think that like me, that there is maybe some bias against Chloe Zhao, and now maybe for being a female director directing a Marvel film solo. Black Widow, which came out earlier this year, also has taken a lot of scrutiny, and that was a film that was directed by Kate Shortland by herself. What do you see? Do you see that as the cause or one of the reasons for why these two films specifically have been kind of getting beat around a little bit compared to?
But to also add to that, Falcon and the Winter Soldier was completely directed by a woman as well. And Captain Marvel, was co-directed by a woman, and I truly believe that is not as bad as everybody says it is as well. So, how can you not say that? How can you not indicate that there's some problems there, especially when you have such a diverse group of characters, right? We have our first, gay MCU character, but also like he's a fat Black man too. It's the first time we've seen any kind of body diversity of a superhero. I wrote a piece for you back in March about Thunder Force and kind of overviewed the history of fat.
I still haven't watched that.
Well, and I covered the history of like fat superhero characters and how fat characters in comic book media in general are kind of demonized. But there's so many demographics in this film that are underrepresented in media in general. And there's so much backlash to the film. It's hard not to connect the two. I think that, to go back to something that both you and Sam said, Chloe did her own thing. That's the thing that I love about the Eternals, is she did her own thing and she made these choices in the script, but also with casting, where she kind of, beat to her own drum and did her own thing. And I really, really appreciate that. I would much rather feel uneasy about a film that, swung and missed than a film like, Sam pointed out, where it's like, oh, I guess it was good, but I can't remember anything about it.
Yeah, right. That's the thing for me. It's the best thing for me too. When I think about Eternals, think about the fact that it was trying to be different, that it was trying to reach for something to take the Marvel universe in a different direction that has never been.
Yeah. And I think Marvel allowed that as well, because they've gotten so much flack from fans and from, underrepresented communities on screen, and also with Disney as well. I think they kind of let Chloe, do what she wanted with that, because the fact that we didn't get, a Black superhero until Black Panther, or, Captain Marvel for women.
So Sam, Marvel takes all this stuff into account. They pay attention to all this kind of stuff that's going on with their movies. Do you think we see more from the Eternals after this?
I think that the characters is almost unavoidable, because they want to go cosmic. Like, they're gonna have to go and explain the assets of, like, the deviants, like how the connection to Thanos and the deviants. They kind of just allude. They didn't even go into that. I was kind of like, wait, do y'all know what Thanos is? What he's half, and they didn't go anywhere near it. But I think that they don't willingly do stuff without having a plan later on. Kevin Feige is not stupid. And so I think that the characters and what the importance of the Eternals, as well as the people that are surrounding this film, I think they're going to go into it. I just don't know if they're going to make a Eternals 2 because of the backlash. And you're right. I mean, all you guys have said it, is that this movie had a lot of things going against it. And I think that there were a lot of people that just didn't believe that Chloe had it in her to tackle these characters. And I think that they were already apprehensive going into it. And I think that they were looking for something to be wrong from the beginning. And then when people started talking about the movie, I was like, okay, what do you think about this? And I'm like, oh, I don't care. That was stupid. That was a waste of time. And I was like, wait, why do you mean? From a story standpoint, this is building to the next phase. Like, the implications of what's going on this, even if you take the last two credit scenes, are very pivotal to where phase 4 is going to be. So I think that, unfortunately, you can't avoid the things that were laid on the foundational level in Eternals. I just don't know if they're going to allow for an Eternals 2 or Eternals 2 with Chloe Zhao. I don't know if they're going to allow her to be able to direct another Marvel movie. And that's unfortunate. I think it's completely wrong. I think it should be continued in some capacity, but I don't know that they will.
The thing is, for me, I think that if Marvel were going to do an Eternals 2, which I don't think they will, I think one of the problems this movie had with attracting people to see it is that just by watching trailers for it and things like that, it seems so disconnected from everything else that was going on, that people were just like, do I need to see this? Do I need to venture out in the middle of a pandemic to go see this? Or can I wait? Sure. That's probably one reason why. It couldn't have got pirated the way Black Widow apparently. But I think people were just like, I don't know if this movie seems like important like the other movies do. Like, it's not Spider-Man. It's not true. It doesn't seem like it's dealing with the multiverse, which was like the thing people were talking about at the time.
Right. Do you guys think that if Thor, when Druid was talking about, like, he's met Thor, in the film, you imagine if Chris Hemsworth was in this film, or they had any of the Marvel characters, and because the one thing I was talking about in my review is I was kind of like, I don't think that people understand how powerful the Eternals are, because there's not an actual power set. Right. There's nobody to compare them to. Like, it's not like you have Thor there and Thor, wow, I'm not powerful than these group of people. you just looking at the deviants just destroying them and wrecking them. They look weak, right? But on a real level, if you have any of the characters that we've had before this film and put them into these or interact with these characters, you would see really how powerful and how important they are. And I think that maybe if one of the characters, like maybe Odin or something as a flashback would have been in this, I think that more people would be like, oh, wow, this is really important. But because there's a disconnect from the characters.
They tried. One of the key scenes they like to play during the commercials was a scene where Richard Madden's character talks about how he could lead the Avengers. That was them trying to get people to realize that they do have a connection somehow, you know. And the Eternals are cosmic power. They're different level of power than the Earthbound heroes. And I think that's hard to see when you're fighting other cosmic power enemies. It's hard to judge that.
I want to kind of pose a question for you guys too. Do you think that this movie would be better received if 2021 had not been literally like jammed packed with new content for Marvel fans?
This was only 2 months after Shang-Chi?
Yeah.
So something like that.
If that, and in between we had What If too. So
right. Yeah, I was gonna say I was wondering if having so many shows filling in the gaps was a good thing for the movies or not. Spider-Man pretty much quieted that for the most part. So I can't really use that anymore. So I don't know. I don't know if it would have made much of a difference or not. But what I was going to say, but I was going to start to say in the beginning before I took myself off track the way I normally do. If they were to do an Eternals too, like I said, I don't think they will, but if they were, I think they would ask Chloe Zhao to be back. I don't think she would do it, but I think they would want her to come back because it does mean something to them to have a Oscar-winning filmmaker making their movies. And
it also isn't the best look too of firing a Asian female director isn't a great look. And on top of that, she's one of the only Oscar winners Marvel has had as well. So it wouldn't benefit in their favor. I think that we will kind of see them cherry pick what they take from Eternals. I think that it will kind of look like, what we're having conversations now about how Daredevil is, sorry, there's like a truck outside, how Daredevil is going to be reincorporated back into the MCU and whether it's not in this universe or whatever. I think it's going to look a little bit like that. I think that we'll see these characters again. Will we see all of them? Probably not. But sorry,
Brian Tyree Henry. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know about Kumail Nanjiani either. I don't know if he would pop up again, but I think,
I think he's one of those characters you would see back again, but in a cameo. I think you'll see a lot of these characters in cameos. They'll pop up in certain places in post-credit scenes, and
I could see him interacting with Guardians of the Galaxy. I could
definitely see
that on the comedy level.
I definitely see something like that happening because they're gonna, if they keep going in the cosmic route, which it looks like they will, especially if they're introducing Adam Warlock, they have no choice but go big and go cosmic.
They're gonna have to
until we eventually see Silver Surfer and Galactus and characters like that, which they will have to do. So they're gonna go that route. But look, anybody who thinks Eternals is the worst of the Marvel movies deserve this. Clearly, they've not seen Hulk. They've not seen. And that's fine. But but clearly, go watch that first before you make the decision that Eternals is the worst ranked Marvel movie. That's ridiculous. Cortland, Sam, this has been great. I appreciate you both coming on here to talk about this topic, the Eternals, with me. Cortland, tell everybody where they can find you on social media and what you got coming up.
Well, I am at Portlandia on Twitter. Right now, I am kind of writing for you. I am about to watch a New Zealand documentary about a New Zealand rap group, which I'm excited about. I love, I studied abroad there, so it's a warm feeling, so I'm excited. And I've got some interviews and some writing coming up, and Sundance is happening, so some good stuff.
All right, Sam?
Yeah, you guys can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at supersel0320. I am the editor of JVS Media and Productions. Most of our content is on YouTube. All you got to do is type in Team JVS. So we've got a lot of reviews down the pipeline, a lot of film festivals coming up. We also do have a website now, teamjvs.com. So you can follow along with some of our writers up there as for a lot of the more written compositions and discussions. We've got a lot of big discussions coming up very soon, and a couple interviews as well. But yeah, thank you,
Right.
Travis, for having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. And of course, I'm Travis Hobson. You can find me every day at punchdrunkcritics.com. You can find me on Twitter at punchycritic, and you can find Punch Drunk Critics at PDC Movies on Twitter. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me on this episode of Cinema Royale. I will see you again soon. Bye. Thanks for checking out the show. If you like what we're laying down, please subscribe to our channel and click the bell to receive notifications for all of our latest stuff.